Let us pray. Almighty God, where you have called us to govern this province, we ask your help to make decisions and laws that will be just and will promote the interest of our people. Almagtige God, ons bid dat u gedurende ons vergaderings ons die nodige wysheid sal gee en ons motiewe suiwer sal hou en dat u ons sal help om al ons tekortkominge te oorkom en al ons besluite aan u op te dra. Sikelela ilizwe letu na bantu balo umisili ukulunga kwipondo letu nkosi sikilele Afrika kina abantwana bayo kukela inkokeli yao Yeniki ikolo Africa. All this we beg in your name. Please be seated. Order members, as has been the practice to date, honourable members will participate in this sitting of the House from both the chamber as well as the hybrid online system, and all members are familiar with the newly adopted rules. Let me take this opportunity to also welcome the guest on my right-hand side, but also the guest in the gallery that is joining us, and also those that are online. We will promptly proceed, members, and I will now call upon the Minister of Finance in our province to table the Provincial Economic Review and Outlook. The Honourable Minister, Minister Bartman.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, people of the Western Cape. The Western Cape is not an island, and our progress is influenced by powerful global and national forces. The 2025 Pero begins its analysis here, and so must we. Therefore, change requires us to be honest about the environment in which we are growing. The global economic picture is becoming tenuous. The world economy is navigating trade barriers, tighter financial conditions, and heightened policy uncertainty. These conditions weigh heavily on emerging markets, making it harder to attract investment needed for growth. Against this global backdrop, our national economy remains in slow motion. The Pero lays bare the stark reality. South Africa's cumulative GDP grew by 7%, continuing a decade-long trend of sluggish performance of an average of 0.7. That is simply not enough to keep pace with a population that grew nationally by 14.9%, or a labor force that expanded by 23.7% over the same period. This weak performance is the result of deep structural challenges, from an unreliable electricity supply to failing logistics infrastructure and weak governance. The national economy is also undergoing a structural shift away from job-creating sectors like manufacturing and construction towards a greater reliance on the finance sector. Honourable Deputy Speaker, this is a difficult national context in which the Western Cape must compete and grow. Against this challenging backdrop, the Western Cape is performing relatively well. Our economy grew by 0.5% in 2024, matching the national average. Over the last decade, our economy has expanded by a cumulative 8.3%, driven by a strong finance and community services sector, even as agriculture, construction, and trade contracted due to natural disasters and national sluggishness. Business confidence remains cautiously optimistic, with the provincial index at 45 points, above the national government's PCI, but still below neutral. Speaker, growth must be measured in real terms. Inflation continues to hit the poorest hardest, straining household budgets and provincial resources. This, combined with the slow national economy, places immense pressure on our own provincial budget. But for this government, the true measure of growth is found in people, not only percentages. The ultimate test of sustainable growth is whether it creates the jobs and opportunities that give people hope, dignity, and a real stake in our province's future. It is to the critical issue of jobs that I now turn. A growing economy must work for our people. I'm therefore exceptionally proud to stand here today and report on the remarkable resilience and dynamism of the Western Cape's labour market. Between the first quarters of 2020 and 2025, a period of immense global and national turmoil and change, the Western Cape's economy created jobs at a rate that far outpaces the rest of the country. Of the 404,712 total net jobs created across South Africa in the last 5 years, an incredible 360,347 of them were created right here in the Western Cape. This means our province, with just 12% of the country's population, accounted for 89% of all net job growth. As a result, our official unemployment rate fell by 1.3 percentage point over the period of review to 19.6%, bringing it below pre-pandemic levels and cementing its position as the lowest in the country. Deputy Speaker, just a note, we did include an annexure for quarter 2, 2025, even though it is outside the period of reporting. Amidst national and international change, we continue to grow because the Western Cape people continue to exhibit resilience, opportunity, and hope. Job creation was driven by the very sectors that make our economy unique. The finance sector was the single largest contributor, creating 172,475 jobs. The substantial employment contribution of the sector can be attributed to the sector's relative size of the provincial economy at 34.1%, combined with solid GDP growth of 8.5% the past decade. But the most remarkable story is found in the construction sector. While the rest of South Africa suffered a net loss of 160,795 construction jobs, the Western Cape created 57,341 jobs in this very sector. This is a powerful indicator of the sustained investment and confidence in our provincial economy, which saw the value of completed buildings grow by nearly 34%, while it contracted nationally. The private household sector also created tens of thousands of jobs, again standing in stark contrast to the severe job losses seen nationally in these sectors. And while not a formal category within the national statistics, our resurgent tourism sector, with international arrivals steadily climbing back, has been a critical source of employment and opportunity across the province. Deputy Speaker, I'm pleased to further report that this has been an increasingly inclusive recovery. Employment among previously disadvantaged populations surged by 13.4% provincially, compared to 3.4% nationally. Most encouragingly, we are turning the tide for our young people and for our women. Youth employment grew by 13.3% in the Western Cape, while nationally it tragically declined by 3.8%. Employment for women grew by 16.7%, nearly 7 times the national rate of 2.5%. However, unfortunately, those with less than secondary education saw a 9% employment decline, highlighting the urgent need to ensure our residents have the right skills to compete in a modern, changing economy. Our Growth for Jobs strategy supports small, medium, and micro enterprises, or SMEs as they're colloquially called, which employ 38.5% of the formal workforce in the Western Cape, the highest share nationally, and they are the heart of our economy. Our G4J strategy backs entrepreneurs. By cutting red tape, improving infrastructure, and investing in skills, we are making it easier for businesses to start, grow, and most importantly, hire. The early results tracked through the G4J show that our efforts are bearing fruit, with the number of SMMEs in the province growing from just over 330,000 in the fourth quarter of 2023 to more than 404,000 in the second quarter of 2025. This ecosystem underpins our labour market's resilience and job creation, which now brings me to our labour market. Deputy Speaker, the story of jobs is about the people who make up our workforce, their skills, their confidence, and their resilience. And what we see in our provincial labour market is a labour force that is growing and confident. Between the first quarters of 2020 and 2025, our labour force, the number of people either working or actively looking for work, grew by an impressive 12.5%, adding 395,000 people. This growth, which was nearly double the national rate, is a powerful vote of confidence in our economy. More people are choosing to look for work here because they believe the opportunity exists. This is supported by our labour force participation rate, which consistently trends higher than the national average. Our economy is drawing people in and encouraging them to participate. Deputy Speaker, while informal employment accounts for a smaller share of our economy than the national average, at 21.3%, our informal job market is growing at a remarkable pace. Between the first quarters of 2020 and 2025, informal employment in the Western Cape grew by 19.5%, nearly 4 times the national growth rate of 4.9%. It remains a critical entry point into the economy, a safety net, and a driver of grassroots entrepreneurship. Its growth is a sign of a flexible and adaptable economy. Finally, a labour market requires skills. Our analysis of labour absorption shows that our economy is creating clear pathways from education and learning to employment. A remarkable 80% of the additional labour force from previously disadvantaged groups with a secondary education were absorbed into employment over the last 5 years. This group accounted for nearly 2/3 of all new jobs created in the province, a testament to the importance of aligning our skills with the needs of our economy. The list of the most in-demand occupations in the Western Cape shows that the needs of our provincial economy is changing. Our economy is seeking more software developers, engineers, health professionals, and finance managers. This is a modern, skills-based, future-fit economy. The challenge, as highlighted in the report, is to ensure that more of our people have the skills needed to seize these opportunities. Deputy Speaker, to sustain this job creation, we must build the platforms for future growth. In the 21st century, no platform is more critical than our digital infrastructure. The PERO shows that the Western Cape is leading this digital transformation with investment in our information and communication assets growing by over 50% since 2020. This investment, seen in the rollout of vast fiber networks and the arrival of global data centers from Amazon and Microsoft, has positioned us as a top technology hub. Our 78% 5G coverage, for example, far outpaces the national average. This digital spine powers our economy. It fuels our job-creating finance, BPO, and transport sectors, creating the high-demand tech jobs our labour market needs and allows our SMMEs to compete globally. It allows us to innovate in services like using blended learning in our schools to prepare our children for an AI-driven world. But a digital economy needs reliable, affordable power to thrive. The greatest single threat, Deputy Speaker, to our digital and economic progress remains our country's energy crisis. South Africa's energy supply remains a threat. While 2024 and 2025 saw a significant reduction in load shedding, largely due to Eskom's generation recovery plan and improved operational performance. Stage 3 load shedding briefly returned in March 2025 due to unexpected plant failures causing a generation shortfall. Eskom production fell 16.6% from 2015 to 2024, while non-Eskom generation rose 50.8%. IPPs contributed over 6,200 megawatts and rooftop solar exceeded 5,000 megawatts. Deputy Speaker, power is changing. Eskom is producing less electricity over time, and residents and businesses are producing more, helping us power our economy. Despite this progress, rising electricity costs threaten competitiveness. with Eskom prices rising by 148.4% over a decade compared to headline inflation of 53.2% over the same period. National Energy Regulator South Africa, or NERSA, has proposed 12.74% tariff increase, which risks energy poverty and job losses. In the Western Cape, we are powering progress. Demand is projected to rise to 4,584 megawatts by 2026. Provincial power sources, including Eskom and IPPs, currently provide 5,290 megawatts. Although Eskom electricity distribution to the province declined by the 15.9% over the past decade, largely due to load shedding and the uptake of small-scale embedded generation, 2024 saw a notable recovery. Our Western Cape Energy Resilience Program aims to enable 5,700 megawatts of non-Eskom generation by 2035. Already, 819 megawatts has been added to the provincial grid in the 2024-25 financial year, with another 1,000 megawatts anticipated in 2025-26. Every megawatt added or saved is another megawatt closer to a load-shedding-free Western Cape. Global trade, Deputy Speaker, shapes growth, and the movement of goods and services are therefore key in helping our economy grow. Our Port of Cape Town is a primary gateway for our world-class exports and therefore a vital engine for provincial jobs and economic growth. However, our port is facing serious challenges with declining container volumes, particularly for exports, and persistent operational inefficiencies that are increasing costs for our businesses. Addressing these port constraints, therefore, is a top priority for this government to unlock the full potential of our economy. To fully appreciate the importance of an efficient port for the Western Cape, we must first look at a broader national trade picture. In 2024, the manufacturing sector of South Africa made the largest contribution to total real exports at 50.5%, followed by the mining sector at 26.7% and agriculture sector at 8.1%. The agriculture sector's real export growth was an outlier over the past decade, increasing significantly by 92.6%. In contrast, the manufacturing sector at 4.2% and mining sectors at 7.8% expanded only marginally over the same decade. Growth must be powered by investment. The national gross fixed capital formation, the money invested back into the economy for machinery, buildings, and infrastructure, has fallen from 15.8% of gross national expenditure in 2015 to 11.7% in 2024. Between the 2015 and 2024, South Africa retained a mostly positive nominal trade balance, reaching a peak in 2021. The substantial increase in South Africa's nominal trade balance in 2021 was primarily driven by a surge in export values, particularly from commodities such as platinum group metals, iron ore, and coal, fueled by a global commodity price boom in the aftermath of COVID-19 lockdowns as demand rebounded strongly while supply chains remained constrained. The weaker rand during the parts of the year also enhanced the competitiveness of the South African exports. China remains South Africa's largest trading partner, accounting for 10.8% of all exports and 20.1% of all imports in 2024. In 2024, Germany surpassed the USA as South Africa's second largest trading partner. This was largely due to a notable reduction in the share of imports from the USA from 8.6% in 2023 to 6.5% in 2024. The 17.820 billion rand reduction in imports from the USA represents 17.8% in South Africa's total reduction in imports and is mainly attributed to a reduction in machinery at 37.7%. Vehicle, aircraft, and vessels, 34.5%, and equipment components at 16.4%. The Western Cape has developed a strong international trade footprint. Its strategic coastal location, competitive agriculture sector, manufacturing diversity, and logistical advantages have positioned the province as one of South Africa's key export hubs. Between 2015 and 2024, nominal exports from the Western Cape increased on average by 6.6% per annum. The Netherlands, United States, and United Kingdom emerged as the top 3 export destinations in 2024. Exports to the Netherlands increased by 3.2 percentage points to 9.8% of total exports, reflecting its role as a logistics hub for European markets. The United States grew its share by 4 percentage points to 8.7%, supported by the AGOA, while the United Kingdom's share rose by 0.9 percentage points to 8.2%. In contrast, exports to Namibia and Botswana declined by 3.2 and 3.0 percentage points, respectively, reflecting persistent challenges in intra-African trade, such as non-tariff barriers and weak cross-border infrastructure. On imports, China remained the largest source of imports for the Western Cape, accounting for 19.3% in 2024, up from 11.5% in 2015. Oman experienced the most significant growth, increasing its share by 8.2 percentage points to 9.2%, likely linked to energy imports. The United Arab Emirates also expanded its share to 6.8%. Import shares from Saudi Arabia, Angola, and Nigeria fell sharply, with Saudi Arabia dropping from 20.5% in 2015 to 3.5% in 2024. While mining only represented 5.9% of the Western Cape's exports in 2024, the sector recorded the highest average annual growth rate at 14.6% between 2015 and 2024. It is mainly attributed to export growth contribution by other metallic minerals at 3.2 percentage points, chrome at 2.5 percentage points, and manganese ore at 1.2 percentage points to China, as well as chrome exports to Mozambique at 1.9 percentage points and the United Arab Emirates at 1.1 percentage points. The agriculture sector was the leading contributor to our growth at 3.3 percentage points, growing at an average rate of 11.2% over the decade. The significant growth of exports in the agriculture sector was mainly a result of growth contributions to total agricultural exports from the Netherlands 2.8 percentage points, United Kingdom 1.7 percentage points, and the United Arab Emirates 0.8 percentage points. The Netherlands was also the largest export destination in 2024, accounting for 22.5% of all exports of the agriculture sector for the Western Cape. However, Deputy Speaker, in 2025, South Africa's exports came under immense pressure as the US imposed steep new import tariffs. A general 10% tariff in April 2025 quickly escalated to a targeted 30% surcharge on South African goods by August 2025, hitting key exports like citrus and vehicle components hard. With African growth and opportunity, or AGOA, under threat and trade costs rising, South Africa faces mounting challenges in protecting access to the US market. In 2024, South Africa's exports for the US were 7.7% of total exports. Products such as motor vehicles at 12.7% and clementines at 10.6% were relatively more reliant on the US markets as an export destination. The manufacturing sector, with a share of 8.6% of total exports, was also relatively more exposed to US markets. Deputy Speaker, while the impact of tariffs mostly fall outside of the payroll's period of review, many of our residents are facing uncertainty in their businesses and their jobs due to the impact of tariffs. A comparison of exports in the second quarter of 2025 with the same period in 2024 for selected products benefiting from AGOA reveals that motor vehicle exports to the US were the most adversely impacted, declining by 54.9%. The significant decrease is attributed to the 10% increase in import tariffs imposed by the US. Closer to home in the Western Cape, the agriculture sector was less exposed, with only 4.8% of all agriculture products exported to the US. However, products which benefit from AGOA, such as citrus fruit, fresh or dried, at 7.2%, such as oranges, 9.3%, and mandarins at 8.6%, are more exposed to US import tariffs. Western Cape exports by the manufacturing sector are the most vulnerable to the US import tariff increases, with 11.8% of all manufacturing goods destined for the US market in 2024. Export data from the 3 months post-tariffs offer some insight into how key sectors and commodity industries have been affected so far, although the full impact of the 30% tariff hike introduced in August 2025 is yet to be determined. A comparison between total exports and US exports in the second quarters of 2024 and 2025 from the Western Cape could provide an indication how sensitive certain sectors and commodities are to a tariff increase from the US. Over the second quarter of 2025, total provincial exports to the US declined by 14.3%, although total exports were still 4% more for the same quarter in the previous year. The 3 months of US tariff increases therefore shaved 1.2 percentage points from total export growth when the two periods are compared. The manufacturing sector was the worst affected, with a total export decrease of 3.7%, largely a result of a 24.2% decline in exports to the US, which contributed 3.3 percentage points to the quarterly decline. Motor vehicle exports from the Western Cape in the second quarter of 2025 only represented a fraction, or 0.2%, of South Africa's total motor vehicles to the US, and is therefore not a representative measure the industry's sensitivity to US tariff increases. In the second quarter of 2025, the Western Cape represented 81.2% of all agricultural exports to the US. Compared to the same quarter in the previous year, exports of agriculture products to the US increased by 25.4%, despite a 10% US tariff import increase. Agriculture exports from the Western Cape were not sensitive in the first 3 months of the increased UF tariffs. However, these insights are subject to future developments. Deputy Speaker, our population is growing, and is growing faster than our economy. This is the reality we must confront with honesty and resolve. While growth brings opportunity, population growth brings new pressure on services, on infrastructure, and on households. The Western Cape's demographic landscape is quickly evolving, driven primarily by increasing life expectancy, declining fertility rates, and significant in-migration. The province's population stood at 7.628 million in 2025, or 12.1% of South Africa's population. The Western Cape has fast become a key economic hub, attracting significant in-migration. For the 2016 to 2024 period, our province has grown with 1.162 million people, an 18% increase. Our population growth is the second highest in the country, second only to Gauteng. While the population of our province is increasing, the total fertility rate in the province has fallen to 1.79, below the international replacement level of 2.1, hinting to future labor risks. Coupled with this, our elderly population, aged 60 and above, has grown from 9.7% to 12.3% since 2016. We therefore face an aging demographic and increased pressure for specialized healthcare and social support. Life expectancy has risen to 67.6 years for males and 72.2 years for females, reflecting improved healthcare, but similarly increasing the potential pressure on future social services. Deputy Speaker, we still have a lot of work ahead of us regarding poverty. Poverty affected 52.7% of residents in 2024. However, the Gini coefficient shows a gradual decline in inequality across most districts, but entrenched disparities, particularly in the Central Karoo, remain a concern. Education, Deputy Speaker, is the foundation of opportunity. It gives our children the chance to dream bigger, to build a better life, and to adapt to our changing world. In the Western Cape, we are committed to giving every child in every classroom the best possible start. Our class of 2024 reached a historic milestone with an 86.6% national senior certificate pass rate, This is a 5.1 percentage point increase from the previous year and the highest in our history. We have also achieved the highest bachelor's pass rate nationally for special needs education schools at 63.3%. We lead the country in mathematics at 78% and physical science at 79.4% in terms of results, reflecting our focus on the critical skills needed for the fourth industrial revolution. Learner retention rates have improved, with primary school retention rising from 80% in 2016 to 92% in 2024, and high school retention climbing from 67% to 71%, including the highest grade 10 to 12 retention rate in the country at 71.3%. Systemic testing shows progress too, with grade 3 mathematics pass rates improving by 11.6 percentage points since 2021 and language results now above pre-pandemic levels. However, outcomes in the senior phase, especially grade 9 language, require further intervention. These gains come with pressure. Over the past decade, learner enrollment grew by 16.65%, while public school infrastructure expanded by 0.5%. As a result, the learner-teacher ratio has increased from 30.7 in 2015 to 34.2 in 2024 and is projected to reach 36.7 by 2025. To respond to these pressures, and despite the constrained fiscal envelope, the Western Cape Department of Education's Rapid School Build program has delivered 17 new schools since its inception in 2022, creating scalable, community-responsive learning environments. The Back on Track program continues to tackle post-COVID learning losses to ensure no child in our province is left behind. Additionally, the Western Cape Education Department is expanding blended and hybrid learning models, particularly in higher grades, to ease physical classroom demand while enhancing digital literacy. These measures, combined with continued investment in foundational literacy and numeracy, systemic testing, and targeted learner support, continues to safeguard the gains the province has already made and to build a more resilient, inclusive, and future-ready education system for the province. Deputy Speaker, a healthy workforce is key for economic growth. Our healthcare system faces similar pressures as our education system. The Western Cape Department of Health and Wellness strives to deliver equitable, high-quality care despite growing pressures. However, population growth has increased pressure on the provincial health system. The doctor-to-population ratio has dropped to 41 per 100,000, and the nurse-to-population ratio to 170.1 per 100,000 in 2024-25, reflecting a 5.25% decline in health workforce density since 2022-23. This trend, driven by population growth, an aging workforce, and fiscal constraints, risks straining our public health system, where 74.3% of residents rely on public health care. Despite these challenges, the Department of Health and Wellness is innovating. The Central Dispensary Unit has revolutionized chronic medication access, serving 11.5% of healthcare delivery in 2024-25, while home and community-based care accounts for 32.8%, reducing pressure on facilities. Our antiretroviral therapy program expanded by 11.8% since 2020-2021, with rural districts like Cape Winelands and Garden Route leading growth, reflecting stronger outreach. However, the discontinuation of US aid funding this year threatens this progress. But as a government, we will continue to actively seek solutions to sustain these gains. Mental health is a growing priority in our health system and a painful reminder of the pressures many of our residents experience. Psychiatric admissions surged by 52.3% from 2015-16 to 2022-23, with a slight decline in 2023-24 and 2024-25. This was primarily driven by post-COVID stresses and socio-economic challenges. Although death by suicide has gone up, Deputy Speaker, 43.4% over the decade, it dropped 23.7% to 673 cases in 2024-25, highlighting the impact of targeted interventions, including expanded psychosocial support and NGO partnership. Deputy Speaker, maternal health is showing progress, with a declining maternal mortality ratio to rural disparities demand targeted investment. Neonatal mortality remains a concern, with the Central Karoo's rate peaking at 23.2 per 1,000 live births in 2022-23, underscoring the need for increased rural healthcare access. Worryingly, immunization rates for children under the age of 1 dropped 15.6 percentage points, requiring urgent action to restore trust, as immunization is a cornerstone of infant health, shielding newborns from deadly and avoidable diseases. Deputy Speaker, social services are the lifeline of our most vulnerable in addressing poverty, trauma, and exclusion to build cohesive communities. Between 2020-2021 and 2024-2025, we saw a significant rise in referrals to our diversion programs. Our diversion program saw a 164.4% increase in adult referrals and 32.9% in children, with children achieving a 77.1% completion rate. The PAERO shows us that adult programs need strengthening to address complex issues like substance abuse. The ultimate goal of these programs is to help break the cycle of reoffending through restorative justice and by creating pathways for healing and reintegration. Child protection services also face mounting pressure, Deputy Speaker. Reported cases of abuse, neglect, or exploitation nearly doubled to 10,207 in 2023-24, with confirmed cases rising to 16.5% of reports in 2024-25. This highlights improved detection, but also rising vulnerability. Statutory intervention, including foster care and reunification services, have quadrupled, reflective of the Western Cape Department of Social Development's proactive response. Access to secure child youth care centres are strained, with turnover up to 3,880 and waiting lists growing 3.6 times since 2020-2021 against a static 701 beds. For our older persons, fiscal constraints combined with a 2.6% rise in the aging population have sadly resulted in decreased community-based care subsidies by 47.4% and subsidized beds by 7.5% to 5,311 beds. Deputy Speaker, our families are changing. The 2025 PAERO data tells us how behind the province's growth, there are also households that carry heavier burdens than most. In the Western Cape, female-headed households now make up almost 40% of all households, a share that has steadily risen over the past decade. These households often face greater risks of poverty and food insecurity as women continue to shoulder unequal responsibilities in caregiving and access fewer economic opportunities. Even more concerning are child-headed households, which have fluctuated between 0.2 and 1% of all households over the past decade. The prevalence of these households remain a painful reminder of the tragic socio-economic realities that leave children in positions no child should ever have to bear. The Western Cape government is responding to these challenges with innovation. The DSD is strengthening adult diversion through partnerships with NGOs for substance abuse therapy and vocational training. For child protection, we're investing in early intervention, after-school programs, and community-based alternatives to reduce the child youth care centre reliance. And to support older persons, DSD is piloting sustainable community care models to promote active aging and reduce institutionalization. These efforts, aligned with the RESIA model and family support initiatives, addresses crime's root causes, foster resilience and inclusion as our population grows. Access to basic services and housing opportunities is fundamental to a dignified life. From 2004 to 2024, the Western Cape achieved near universal electricity access at over 90%, 95.2% refuse removal, 91.8% flush toilets, and 83.5% piped water. This delivery outpaces national averages by up to 31.5%. But gaps still persist in rural areas and informal settlements where aging infrastructure and insecure land tenure cause service disruptions. Housing demand has surged by 14.6% to 643,377 units by 2025, with the Central Karoo's demand skyrocketing by 490.6%. The demand of the Department of Infrastructure has made progress over the past decade with the delivery of 132,705 housing opportunities, including 74,272 houses and 58,666 service sites, excluding total subsidies also. Fiscal constraints, COVID-19 disruptions, and the construction mafia remain key challenges to this sector. A 48% rebound in service sites and 6,515 title deeds in 2024-25 financial year signals recovery. A changing economy and changing population demands innovative, evidence-based solutions to navigate our evolving social challenges. It will require focusing on increasing momentum to achieve impact and growing with change. Deputy Speaker, as our province grows, so too do the pressures that shape the daily lives of our residents. Today, as we take stock of how the Western Cape is changing with growth, we must confront the realities of crime and violence in the Western Cape, while at the same time acknowledging pockets of progress and recognizing the work we are doing together to reclaim our communities. The Pero paints a complex but instructive picture. Across the Western Cape, crime remains uneven, with some categories showing improvement and others continuing to rise. Between 2019 and 2024, crimes such as drug-related offences and driving under the influence has shown steady declines. Drug-related incidents, which once peaked at over 72,000, fell by 11%, while cases of driving under the influence dropped by 24.9%. Signaling both effective enforcement and shifting social behaviours. Yet murder, Deputy Speaker, the most devastating of crimes, continues to rise. The report notes that despite gains in certain areas, murder rates have sustained an upward trajectory, returning to pre-pandemic patterns as restrictions eased. The rise in violent crime remains a pressing concern, one that fractures families, unsettles neighborhoods, and hinders the full promise of growth. Each life lost to violence is not only a personal tragedy, it is a blow to the stability and confidence of the communities we serve. Nowhere do we see the far-reaching effects of crime more visibly than in the scourge of gang violence. Gang-related killings remain one of the most severe safety crises in our province. In 2024-25, there were 4,467 murders, of which 882 were gang-related. The Western Cape, though home to less than 12% of South Africa's population, accounted for nearly 90% of the country's gang-related murders. Our province has between 90 and 130 active gangs, including notorious groups affiliated to prison networks, with total membership exceeding 100,000. Many of these gangs target children for recruitment, pulling them into a world of crime before they have the chance to build a life of dignity and opportunity. These patterns of violence cannot be solved by policing or boots on the ground alone. They demand multi-sectoral action. It demands a whole of society approach that tackles not only crime, but violence prevention. Beyond gangs, murder itself casts the most profound and haunting shadow. The murder per capita in the Western Cape increased by 30.2% over the past decade, reaching 61 murders per 100,000 people in 2024. The burden is uneven. The Cape Metro remains the epicenter with 73 murders per 100,000 people. The Garden Routes saw the steepest growth in murder per capita at 49.6%. Rural districts such as the Central Karoo at 29 per capita and the West Coast 30 per capita record lower but still deeply concerning rates. Each of these numbers represents a life lost, a family grieving, a community left fearful. The effects of violence ripple outward. It erodes trust, strains mental health, and disrupts economic stability. Deputy Speaker, no budget figure or economic indicator can fully measure the cost or impact of violence. It is felt in the empty seat at the dinner table, in the silence of the classroom, and the hesitance of a business to invest in a neighborhood once full of promise. Faced with these challenges, the Western Cape government had acted decisively through integrated and evidence-based interventions that bring safety closer to the people. At the heart of this response stands the Law Enforcement Advancement Plan known as LEAP. This partnership between the Western Cape government and the City of Cape Town deploys over 700 trained officers across the highest risk areas of our province. LEAP is more than visibility. It is targeted, data-driven initiative focused on crime hotspots identified through analysis and local knowledge. Its goal is simple yet profound: to save lives and restore confidence in the rule of law. Speaker, Deputy Speaker, we need to measure impact. Over 17 quarters of deployment, LEAP has driven measurable improvements across all major crime categories in the areas where it operates. The share of crime in the hotspot areas where LEAP officers were deployed in comparison to the rest of the Western Cape declined. Murder decreased by 3.8 percentage points. Robbery at residential premises decreased by 3.5 percentage points, and sexual offences decreased by 1.6 percentage points. In Yanga, once ranked amongst the most violent precincts in the country, records a 9.4 percentage point reduction in murders during the LEAP deployment period. This is not a coincidence. It is proof that evidence-led interventions work. Our LEAP program shows that when national, provincial, and local partners work together, guided by data and driven by urgency, lives are saved. The Western Cape is experiencing rapid population growth, driven by people seeking better opportunities and safer communities. But as more residents arrive, the pressure on infrastructure, services, and law enforcement grows. Safety is therefore not only a moral duty, it is also a strategic economic imperative. And the Western Cape's ability to sustain growth depends on our ability to protect it. Honourable Deputy Speaker, I would like to thank our head official, Ms. Yolinda Cantana, our Provincial Treasury, the Provincial Government Budget Office, our Provincial Treasury Payroll Coordinator, chapter coordinators, infographics coordinator, advisors and quality controllers, technical editors, the special contributions from our Western Cape government departments and my ministry for your hard work and contributions to the payroll. Deputy Speaker, the Western Cape is changing with growth, economic growth as well as population growth. We are seeing increased GDP growth, increased job growth, reduction in the Gini coefficient, and an increase in our Human Development Index. But we are struggling to keep pace with the natural demands of 18% population growth. While challenges remain, our interventions show progress, and the pathway forward will require increased momentum, scaling success, value for money, and measuring impact. This impact needs to speak to the increased job creation, greater safety, stronger communities, and renewed trust. And therefore, as our province's economy grows, as our population continue to outpace economic growth, we must leapfrog through innovation and for impact in order to provide dignity and hope for all of our people. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. The Provincial Economic Review and Outlook will now be referred to the relevant committee for consideration. Honourable members, before we adjourn, I would like to remind members that the Budget Committee meeting would commence 15 minutes after the adjournment of the sitting. That concludes the business. Honourable Van Wyk.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The notice for that meeting is for 11:30, so it's a little bit longer.
Honourable members, we will stick to the notice time of 11:30. 11:30 for the Budget Committee meeting to commence. Honourable members, that concludes the business of the day. The Secretary will now end the meeting and all members will be exited from the sitting. The House is adjourned.